Have you ever hit a home run or a triple or a double? Maybe like me, getting to first base would be a great day at the ballpark. In our session on resumes, we talked about the purpose of a resume is to get to the interview. So what's the purpose of an interview? It's to get to the next interview. Each interview has a purpose as well. The purpose of the phone interview is to help you get to the face-to-face interview. The face-to-face interview is to get you to a point where you're talking to decision makers about salary negotiations. In this session, our founder, Gary Hansen, will be talking about interviews and effective interviews and how to have one interview that leads to a phone interview and a phone interview that helps you lead to that face-to-face interview. Negotiating salary is your final interview, and then soon you'll be home to landing that job that you love. Let's see what the coach says in this session.
Well, we want to talk about interviews. And I want to start out this whole section of interviewing talking about two words: fast and slow. Let's go back in time, 2007. The economy was going great. Unemployment was at 4.5%, basically full unemployment. Everybody that wanted to work could find a job. The economy was going great guns. Let me tell you how the HR department handles good times. They hire fast, and they fire people slowly. When I've got a lot of jobs to fill, and I have a very small pool of people, then the HR department has to move very quickly to make decisions, to get people in. Once you've interviewed somebody, you know you've got 48-hour window to make a decision, because you're concerned that somebody else is going to hire them before you do. So you move very quickly in good times. Now, we're in exactly the opposite time now. We're in a recession. We have been now for a year and a half. So now how do HR departments hire? They hire very slowly. They also fire very quickly. They fire fast. You may be saying, why does it take so long? I'll tell you why it takes so long. Companies do everything possible to not hire new employees. In a recession, the last thing they want to do is add more overhead. And the largest overhead a company has is payroll. And so they're going to do everything possible not to hire any other employees. So here's what's going on behind the scenes. The typical department head, the typical manager is hearing from supervisors, we've got this problem. We can't get this work done. We need more capacity. We need help. The manager says, okay, I'll see what I can do. The manager goes to the director or the vice president and says, we've got to hire somebody. And the VP says, I don't think so. We're not hiring anybody right now. You go back and try to figure out how to do this. 2 weeks later, the manager's back in the VP's office saying, we've tried. We've tried everything possible to move people around, to rearrange responsibilities, and we can't figure this out. This is becoming a big issue for our department. We have to hire somebody. And it's only after the hiring manager is in the VP's office pounding on his desk that the vice president finally says, okay, call HR and let's hire somebody. Now, even after the process starts, and this happened to me over and over again at Promise Keepers, even after we posted the job and we started interviewing, we were still trying to figure out how not to hire somebody. We were still trying to figure out how to change things around so we didn't have to add payroll. Have you ever interviewed for a job that suddenly wasn't even available anymore? That's why. They posted the job, and then they decided not to hire. And it happens all the time in a recession. I like to call it the level of pain. What's the level of pain of the employer? That department head has got to go fight for every new job they get. And then they've got to fight to keep everybody in their department. And then there's a whole different mentality and scenario that goes on during layoffs. But we're not going to get into that today. But I want you to understand the mentality of what's going on here. employers are hiring very, very slowly. And so you may get a phone interview and then you may wait a week, get another phone interview. I had a recent coaching client named Dave. Dave had 6 phone interviews before he actually got to meet somebody that worked at the company. He waited 2 months for those 6 interviews. That's a little extreme, but that's not totally unusual. Just understand, companies are hiring very slowly. On the other end, they're firing pretty fast. If you don't work out, they're not going to give you a second and third chance. You're gone. So understand, once you land that job, you got to be in the starting blocks and you've got to sprint for the first 30 days you're there. You've got to give them your absolute best in effort, and you've got to make them want you to stay. And so give them your best effort because they're evaluating you. If they don't like what they see in the first 2 weeks, you're on very thin ice. So just remember, they're hiring slowly, but they're firing fast. Okay, let's talk about what's different in the interviewing process today than, say, years ago. And it's one thing. It's the phone interview. How many of you have had a phone interview in the last month? Okay? Most of the room has put their hand up. Most of you have had a phone interview. This is what's changing about the interviewing process. You're talking to somebody on the phone that you've never met, and you have no idea what they look like, and you have no idea who they are, and yet you're supposed to give them intelligent answers. That's pretty challenging. For a lot of people, that's very challenging. So let's talk about the phone interview. Let's talk about the 3 purposes of the phone interview. First of all, they're going to be short. So from the employer standpoint, they want to figure out in 30 minutes or less whether you're a possible candidate. No 90-minute phone interviews. No, no, no. 20 to 30 minutes is the average on the phone. They're trying to determine your skills. Do you have the right skills for the job they've posted? And lastly, they're trying to narrow down the field quickly. And so you've got to make a good impression in a really short amount of time.